So you've launched your group offer or your new program or your course, and the first time you launch it goes over great. People love it, people registered, you got a ton of great feedback, so you think you have a hit on your hands. So you launch the next time, and fewer people enroll, and it feels a lot harder. And then you launch the third time, and it's crickets, and no one's buying. And you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? It seemed like this was going to be a hit. What happened? Well, my friend, you have fallen into the trap of the second launch syndrome. So in today's video, we're going to talk about why the second launch is harder than the first launch and what to do about it so you consistently fill your offers and or group programs. Let's dive in. The second launch syndrome is what I've coined the term about what happens when you have a great first launch and yet the next cohorts don't fill as well. Why do I call this a second launch syndrome? Well, in your first launch, you are almost always selling to people you have banked up lots of trust with who are ready and eager to buy from you. So they do. You get most of your super fans and the people who were ready and willing to buy what you put in front of them. That's awesome. But the next go around, you've depleted your audience of those super fans. The people that were on your list before, some of them will buy now that they've seen some of the results you've gotten. But a lot of people in your audience may never buy from you. This is what happens with second launch. There are 3 reasons why this happens. So 1, there's not enough new people in your world, full stop. So if you launch to an audience of 200 and you get 5 or 6 enrollees, but the next time you go to launch the same program, your audience is still about 200, maybe 250, 300. There's just not enough new people to be aware and interested of what you do in your work. Courses and group programs tend to have somewhere between a 1 to 5% conversion rate on purchase. So if out of your audience of 200, you've already sold to that 5% and you haven't grown your audience a lot more, there's just not enough new people who haven't already seen what your offer is, who haven't considered it, to really make up the numbers. What also happens on the second launch is that you haven't built up enough trust yet. So oftentimes as you're building your network, building your work, building your audience, you're generating lots of trust in people. And sometimes you've been building up the trust with people for years. And then when you launch, again, you've depleted all the people that really, really wanted to buy and trusted you. And even if you grow your audience, you're replacing them with people who don't know you as well, who haven't totally bought in on your idea, who haven't been patiently waiting with bated breath to work with you. So there's just not enough trust necessarily in the individuals that you brought in, particularly if you don't add value and build trust in between the sales process. So we'll talk more about that later in the video. But if you're just selling and you're you sell and launch and then you go quiet for 6 months and then you just show up and sell and launch again, there's not enough trust. People don't know you well enough yet. The third problem that contributes to second launch syndrome is that your messaging isn't clear enough for cold or less aware audiences. Your first launch, even if the messaging wasn't super dial in and the transformation wasn't clear and the results weren't clear, people are buying kind of for you. So they know you, they like you, they trust you. Even if it's mushy and amorphous, you're like, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to do it with me? And your super fans will probably say yes. You'll have people in your audience that will buy everything you do because they know you, like you, and trust you. You don't have to work that hard. I mean, obviously we all have to work to sell because sales is a skill, but with people like you and trust you, they're more willing to just invest in something that is less clear. But as you're getting new people in your world, as you're trying to build up trust, your messaging has to be clearer for people who haven't spent months or years in your world already. And so the messaging challenges we might have gotten away with in the first launch will become readily apparent in launch 2 and 3 when you're working with people that don't know you as well. So these are the challenges that show up in second launch syndrome. There's not enough new people in our world. We haven't yet built up enough trust with people who are new to our world, and the messaging isn't clear for colder and less aware audiences. Well, Jessica, that sounds bad. I don't want to do that. I want to continue launching my program over and over again. So what can I do to avoid second launch syndrome? I just concluded my 6th launch of my Deeper Foundations group cohort program. And every time I have managed to fill 15 seats through alumni and new members. So I will share with you some of my learnings from this past launch. So again, the first step is getting new people into your world. Every 6 months over the last 2 years, my ConvertKit audience has grown by roughly 300 people. It's been startlingly linear. And that actually, with the 3% conversion rate, turns into about 10 new people per launch that enroll in my program. So, how did I get these new people into my world? Some of it's from social media, sure, but most of it is I've been consistently showing up in other people's worlds, borrowing other people's audiences. Just in 2024 alone, I guested on 24 podcasts. I guest taught in 15 different communities or different events for those communities. And I had a number of coffee chats and conversations through members of communities I'm a part of, I've been an active part of roughly 17 to 20 communities since I started my entrepreneurship journey in 2021. So that's a lot of exposure to a lot of new people, of which people then come onto my list and in my world. So step 2 is building trust. So I really believe that it's not the messaging that goes out in the 6 to 8 weeks before the launch and during the launch. I think it's the messaging and the trust you build with people throughout the year. So every month I teach a Deeper Business Dialogues free class. I have had up to 70 attendees join some of these free trainings that I do. These are not sales pitches. These are not come join my webinar to be part of my launch. No, these are straight up free trainings. You might host a roundtable. You might curate conversations for people. You might offer free strategy calls or a free coaching call to get people into your world and to trust you more. But for 2 years straight, every month I have been offering a free class or training. And many of the people who have either bought my program before, bought my program this launch, or recommended me have been to a trust building activity like a free workshop. You might offer free coaching to your community, conversations with people on your list. You might offer shorter paid workshops throughout the year. You might also just have like a really strong podcast or a very compelling email that helps build trust with you. So that when you show up in their inbox, you're not just trying to sell them the latest thing. You're not trying to launch with them. You're actively trying to build trust through a more relational and conversation way. This also increases the time they spend with you, making people more likely to purchase. Again, I don't do this just to get people to buy from me. I do this because teaching is something I love to do and it's my passion project, but it has a really good side effect of building trust with people who haven't worked with me yet but want to. They know that they're getting this and they can trust me. And the third is messaging not clear. So some of this can be resolved with doing voice of customer research. So after every launch, I have a relatively robust retrospective form to understand what people were looking for and what results they got so I can put those on my sales page. I get testimonials. I interview people who have gone through my program and say, what were the hesitations you had about buying? Why did you decide to buy now? What were the things that convinced you that this was a good investment for you? And those made it into my messaging and my sales page. But also, if you build lots of trust with people and you have people referring you and spreading the good word, again, messaging it still matters, but it matters a little less if someone you're like, yeah, I don't totally know what it is on the sales page, but so-and-so had a great experience and so-and-so full-throated recommended me for this program. So, having really solid trust with your audience and with your program participants can overcome some of this messaging where the messaging isn't clear. But again, that all goes back to trust and new people and continuing to expand your ecosystem. If you're planning to launch something repeating and you don't want to have the second launch syndrome and go through that dip, make sure you are doing 3 things throughout the year. 1, you are consistently growing your audience through, you can use social media, but again, collaborations, guest teaching, networking, relationship building, and there's an entire sustainable sales and marketing playlist that can help you do that. 2, be thinking about how to develop trust again all the way through the year. Don't just wait and show up in people's inboxes. Give them time to get to know you, get to trust you, and budget for your program. Don't wait to set the price and tell them the price until later on. Let people see what it costs, prepare for it, save for it, budget for it, and then be ready to work with you. And then third, make sure you're getting really clear on your messaging. Talk to the people that have gone through your program, what can be improved, what really stood out for them, what is the reason why they bought, and incorporate that into your messaging. Again, start that much earlier than you think And by the way, these can be great affiliates and referral partners. If you're planning for launch this year, I'd love to hear one or two of these ideas that you are going to take to avoid the second launch slump.